All right, well, welcome everybody to our Friday night study. Our guest speaker tonight is Alan Turner, who has spoken many times and usually has very thought-provoking topics. And I'm sure tonight will be no different. So let Alan introduce his topic and roll right into the study. All yours.
Okay. So just so you all know, I don't allow any questions during or after the study. I don't allow comments and no input because it could reveal something like my ignorance.
Well, that concludes our broadcast for tonight. We thank you for tuning in.
I'm sorry, was this a corporate church of God I signed it to?
Oh, ow.
Can we ask questions before the study? You didn't say that.
Oh, good one.
Oh,
when you tee it up that way, Al, you gotta expect some sass.
oh yeah. Yep. All right, that is exactly what I expect from this group. Now, see, if you didn't know me, you could say, is this guy kidding? And maybe we better just not say anything.
I can hardly wait to see the YouTube comments on this one.
Okay, well, what I have here today is a topic called, and none shall make them afraid. And I'm just going to simply let you follow along with my Word document, if that's okay. Can you see it? Can you see the Word document?
Yes, we see it just fine. Nice and beautiful and wonderful.
Okay, so this topic, and none shall make them afraid, has a subtitle here, We Have a Great Shepherd. And I want to read 5 separate references to get us thinking about the flock of Yahweh. Zephaniah 3:13. Now these next 5 references will help to prime us up to get us reminded of the importance of our great shepherd. Zephaniah 3 says, the remnant of Israel shall not do iniquity nor speak lies, neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth, for they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Next reference, Ezekiel, and they shall no more be a prey to the heathen, neither shall the beast of the land devour them, but they shall dwell safely, and none shall make them afraid. Hebrews 13:20. Now the God of peace that brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep, isn't that a beautiful title? Who through the blood of the everlasting covenant. 1 Peter 2, where you were straying like sheep, but now have returned to the shepherd and guardian of your souls. I like the RSV here, the word guardian, because that's more of a modern way how we see a guardian, someone who oversees your affairs and cares for you. Yours may say shepherd and bishop or overseer of your souls. Last of the 5 here is in Psalm 95. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down, and let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will hear his voice. So I just read those 5 for the simple reason of getting us acclimated to the concept, a concept that we already know about, but to just kind of wet our whistle a little bit here as we move into this study to remind us. I'm not really bringing to you anything that you don't already know. My motive for the study is to bring to your attention something you already know, and that is that we have a great shepherd. And when there is no shepherd, confusion, fear, trauma, and the word trauma, I'm using it here to relate to hunger, disease, and woundedness, and torment, and scattering, all those things come upon the flock. I have a book here. It's let me see if I can stop share for a moment. You know where it says, and they shall lie down and none shall make them afraid. I have a book here. It's called A Shepherd's Look at the Psalm 23. It's a book that was published in 1970. And so it's fully 50 years old. But the author, Philip Keller, of this book became a shepherd in Africa for several years. And so he writes this book out of his personal experience as a shepherd in Africa. And it says, in order for sheep to lie down, there are several requirements. Now, you probably don't know about this. Most of us drive down the highway and we see cows laying down, some standing, some walking. But for sheep to lay down, here's the 4 requirements. He says, the strange thing about sheep is that because of their very makeup, it is impossible for them to be made to lay down unless 4 requirements are met. Owing to their timidity, they refuse to lay down unless they are, first of all, free from fear. And because of the social behavior within the flock, sheep will not lay down unless they are free from social stress with the other animals. If tormented by flies and parasites, sheep will not lay down. Only when they're free of those pests can they relax. And the 4th requirement is they will not lay down unless they are free from hunger and thirst. So that's interesting, isn't it? Because we are his flock. And in a sense, all those things apply to us. For us to lay down, to have satisfaction, to be able to be in contentment. We can't be hungry. We can't be tormented by pests like demons flying around or demonic influences in the vicinity or direct attacks. You can't lay down and relax. You can't do it if you're in fear of a predator because there's no security. You can't do it if you're hungry and thirsty because you're wanting, right? So it kind of gives you a new understanding of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Because if we're wanting for security or for food or for safety or to be to have terrorizing things removed from us, our shepherd isn't completing all his duties. But when the Lord is our shepherd, we shall not want, because he provides all those things in his own way, in his own time. So let's read down now here and see this statement about sheep that have no shepherd. We go back to Numbers 27 in verse 15 through 17. And the Lord spake and Moses spake unto the Lord, saying, let the Lord, the God of all spirits, of all flesh. That's a funny title, isn't it? The God of the spirits of all flesh. I don't think I see that statement appear anywhere else throughout the Bible. But it is a kind of an assigned, it's a title of activity, isn't it? It's a title of, that without Without his appointment, you don't have a spirit.
Isn't it another way of saying son of man? Because, the spirit
There's
in
a
our
spirit
flesh
in your
is only
flesh.
due to him, right?
Right. Of all flesh, right.
Just popped in my head, so I don't know if that's right or not.
Let him set a man over the congregation, which may go out before them, and which may go in before them, which may lead them out, and which may bring them in, for the reason that the congregation of the Lord be not as sheep which have no shepherd. Because when sheep don't have a shepherd, it's a disaster, isn't it? If the sheep have no shepherd, they don't know how to guide themselves. They don't know how to go in, and they don't know how to go out, because they simply don't have the skill set or the knowledge or the wisdom or the capacity to lead themselves. And neither do you, and neither do I. And for that reason, the fact that sometimes sheep have no shepherd in the physical realm, that is, an individual who would teach them and lead them, they tend to go off and go astray until they are returned to the chief shepherd. So let's read down a little bit now here to 2 Chronicles. Now we're in a situation with Micaiah, the prophet who always spoke negative things to Ahab. And Ahab's asking Jehoshaphat, I need help in this battle, Jehoshaphat. Will you come in league with me and help me to fight? And they said, what? And the situation was that the other prophet said, everything's cool. You'll be all right. You're going to be a winner. But then Jehoshaphat says, yeah, but is there any other prophet? Can we ask someone else? So they bring in Micaiah, who always brings bad news to Ahab. Verse 16. And then he said, I did see all Israel scattered on the mountains as sheep that have no shepherd. The Lord said, these have no master. Let them return, therefore, every man to his house in peace. So he's trying to talk him out of it, really. He was trying to say, don't go to this fight. This is not the hill you want to fight on, because it's not going to go well for you. You're going to be like sheep that have no shepherd. In other words, you're going to turn to retreat, and you're going to be scattered. And it's not going to be pretty. You know how it is when an army pursues and the other army's running. They're heading for the hills. They're trying to hide in the forest. And then how do you get home? They're hunting you down, right? It's a disaster. And then one more time we see the statement in Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted. And they were scattered abroad as sheep that have no shepherd. Well, I thought they had shepherds. Wasn't there a religious order in the day? Didn't they have leaders and rabbis? And weren't there people who could tell them how to live and what to do, how to find their spiritual food? And weren't there people that could keep terror away? Weren't those who were responsible for the religious order doing their job? Then he said to the disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray therefore, ye therefore, the Lord of harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. What kind of laborers? Was he saying pray that there will be people who will become shepherds? That there will be men who will, by divine appointment, who will, by inspiration, be able to protect and care for and carry on the shoulders those who are lame, so to speak, in a figurative way. Those who would do the responsibilities of a shepherd, who would lead them to a place where they can lie down. The people were unsatisfied, of course. They weren't being sustained by a true shepherd. But they went, what? It says you go make a proselyte and turn him into twice the son of hell as you are. It was a sad situation, right? It was a dark time for them. And they had people that were like sheep having no shepherd. And so that's why he had compassion on them. To pray for those who will come and be able to be helping, serving, and protecting and giving and feeding. All right, let's drop down now to Luke 15:3. This is the parable of the lost sheep and the celebration that follows when he is found. So sometimes I think that we forget the careful attention that we are given individually. And that's what this kind of brings out, doesn't it? It really accentuates the fact that we have a true shepherd, a great shepherd of the sheep, who, if we were going astray, would he not come and find us and bring us back again? Let's read through this. And the reason I remind us of this is because sometimes I think people view others that they think are going off, and maybe they are, I don't know, but they view others as, well, there they go. They just fell away and of their own volition. There can be no help for them. Or does the shepherd, the great shepherd of the sheep, say, I have a sheep who has gone astray. I'm going to leave 99 here in a safe place. I'm going to go get that one. How do you view that? And he spake this parable, verse 3, unto them, saying, what man is there of you who have 100 sheep? If he loses one, does he not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after that which is lost, at least until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. This same book has a picture here in the back page. It's inside the back cover. Can you see that from there? I don't know if you can see it or not. But it's got a picture there of a man holding the sheep around his neck. And when he's found it, he lays it on his shoulders and he rejoices over it. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and he says, come on over and rejoice with me and celebrate. I found my sheep and he was lost, but I found him. I say unto you that likewise, there is joy in heaven over one sinner that repents, more than over 99 persons who are just, who have no need of repentance. So you see there the attention that is given and the effort that is put forth to the one who is lost. And I hope that we see ourselves that way when we are so critical and so hard on ourselves, although I suppose I could be labeled lukewarm for saying such a thing, that we don't remind ourselves that this is true right here. This is actually true. And it's supposed to give us a picture of when we're in trouble and we're in the wrong direction, the true shepherd is paying attention and he knows what to do. And when he brings you back, there's celebration. Same as the prodigal son, right? I'll just read, verse 24. Luke 15:24. For this, my son was dead Now he's alive again. Yeah, he was lost, and now he's found. And they began to be merry. They began to celebrate that which was lost is now found and it's come back. So I think it's helpful for us to remember that he cares for the flock on that level, where he leaves the 99. And in the case of the prodigal son, he convicts the person who finds themselves where they crash and burn, and now I need help. And he convicts them to come back to the Father, right? Come back to your Father's house. And these are important things to remember because it reminds us of his mercy, his patience, and all the qualities that make him a father to his children, and that make his son the true shepherd of the sheep, the great shepherd of the sheep. So sometimes I think men were put in the position of shepherding sheep that they may learn some of the qualities of what it means to shepherd human beings, such as David. Well, we know Moses for 40 years was in Midian, and he was with the flocks in Midian. But we're going to look at David right now in 1 Samuel 16, 11. And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are these all your sons?" And he said, "No, there remains one young, the youngest one, and there he is. He's out with the sheep." Do you suppose, and I'll just ask this question, do you suppose David was being groomed from the womb that he would someday be anointed to be a king? And because of that, he was being taken through a kind of a training program so that when it came time to be a king, he would be a shepherd king. Just food for thought. There remains one, and there he is keeping the sheep. And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him in, for we're not going to sit down until he comes here." So he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, with bright eyes, and he was good looking. And the Lord said, "Arise, Samuel, and anoint him, for this is the one." Then Samuel took the horn of oil, anointed him right in front of his brothers, who were all older than him. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. Interesting, isn't it? The brothers got to be the eyewitnesses, and Jesse got to be an eyewitness of this event. And so some years are passing, and he's still not, right? And eventually Saul chases him, tries to kill him, even though he's done great exploits. And so he's on the run, and he's living in caves. He's thinking, what's going on? I know what Samuel did when I was younger. But now I've been running, and I think the estimates are like maybe up to 10 years. Because I think David was 30 years old when Saul died, and he took the position of being king in Israel. So it was quite a thing, isn't it, that he was anointed, and then years have to pass. And he has to go through a lot of extreme difficulty before that anointing to kingship was to be fulfilled. It's quite a thing to think about, because there had to be doubts along the way. There had to be times when David is thinking, I wonder if the anointing took. I wonder if it really worked. I wonder what's going on here. All right, you want to see some of David's doubts, and you just go through the book of Psalms and you see his ups and downs and everything else about him. Let's look now at 2 Samuel 5. 2 Samuel 5, 1 through 5. Then all the elders, the tribes of Israel, then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and spoke, saying, "Indeed, we are your bone and your flesh. also in time past, when Saul was king over us, you, David, you were the one who led Israel out and brought them in. See a similar language there to what we read in Numbers 27, that you may go out and come in, right? Know how to lead, know how to make things happen, know how to keep the nation safe, know how to keep every aspect of your leadership role, your responsibility, I should say, active. And you brought them in, and the Lord said to you, you, David, shall shepherd my people Israel and be ruler over Israel. Now, how did they know that? How did they know what the Lord said to him? Did it leak out? Was there some kind of a mole? Did it get leaked through some kind of social media or something? What was the social media of that day? I don't know. Therefore, the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. Well, he was already anointed by Samuel many years earlier. Now he's being anointed a second time. I suppose that was just so that it's the ceremony of everybody can look on and see this is official. So if you don't believe Samuel did what David claims he did, and David's brothers know what he did, you don't believe that, well, then you have to believe this right now. He's being anointed in a public ceremony. And David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. All right. It's quite a thing, isn't it, that David kept sheep as a boy, and now he's appointed to shepherd Israel. It's quite a thing, I think. And he was reminded by, well, let's read it. 2 Samuel 7, verse 8. Now therefore, so shall you say unto my servant David. So the prophet was told, go tell David what I said. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took you, David, from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, Israel. So you get this flavor in this of the man had this experience in his youth, and he carries that experience into his adult life as a king. The experience of caring for the sheep in the sheepcote, that there's an oversight, and there is a protective responsibility. There's the caring for when weather is bad, and there's the caring for that they have the right kind of food, and there's the caring that they don't have the insects and the diseases that come from that biting at them, and they don't have fear, and they can lay down. Because of David, none made them afraid. And when you see what happened, David had enemies in his own household at some point in time because of things he had done, but Israel had rest from their enemies. So they could lie down and none made them afraid. We see a very similar statement here in Psalm 78. Talking of David again, verse 70. Psalm 78, verse 70. And he chose David also, his servant. He took him from the sheepfolds. He took him from following after the ewes that were great with young. So he's taking him out of a situation where, look, these sheep are fully pregnant, and they're not as mobile as all the other sheep. And they need special care. They need special attention so that they can fulfill the pregnancy and produce and bring prosperity to the flock. following the ewes, great with young. And he brought him, David, to feed Jacob, his people, and Israel, his inheritance. And so David, he fed them according to his integrity of his heart. And he, David, guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. And that's how he finishes the psalm. What a beautiful conclusion to the psalm. It's an expression of the tender care and the oversight that the man had because of his training in the field of the ewes with young, and all the other needs, all the requirements of a good shepherd. So I love these verses here at the end of Psalm 78. These verses, they just, every time you read them, that just really, you get that sense of the good shepherd who was trained to do it right, and he did it right. So it's very encouraging to know that we have a great shepherd of the sheep who far exceeds what David has done and continues to work on his flock. All right. We're going to get past this here. Last words of David. At least that's what it says here. I don't know if that means these are the absolute last words, but 2 Samuel 23, 1 through 4 says something about shepherding. Now, maybe I'm reading into it a little bit. You can let me know. Now, this is 2 Samuel 23. Now, these be the last words of David. David, the son of Jesse, said, the man who was raised up on high, the anointed one of God, of Jacob, the sweet psalmist of Israel, said. Now, here's what he said. The Spirit of the Lord spake by me. His word was in my tongue. Well, that would be one beautiful characteristic, an absolutely necessary characteristic for a great shepherd of the sheep, or even one of the most desirable characteristics of a human shepherd. The God of Israel said, the rock of Israel spoke to me. He that rules over men must first of all be just, ruling in the fear of God. But there's a prime characteristic of a true shepherd. Well, because what happens if you have a shepherd? He's a pretty good shepherd. He feeds the flock and kind of protects the flock, but he's not just in every way. As a matter of fact, being just is one of his weaknesses. He allows some of the other flock to push with the shoulder and the side and let the weak ones be pushed away while they consume the good stuff. Who really needs the good stuff anyway? How about the weak one and the sick of the flock? And the ones who are the runt of the flock. That's the ones who ought to be given the very best, that they can be revived and restored. And so that's why I say here that I don't think I'm reading into this. The good shepherd, it's he that rules justly. And he rules in the fear of God. What does that mean to you, the fear of God? That you're answerable, that you're accountable, that you are afraid of what things would be like if you disobeyed him, if you went off in a lifestyle or in a pattern of behavior that is against him and his commandments and his way. That could be part of it. Fear of him in awe, in that you are so in awe that your utmost honor and respect and worship is towards him. I'd love to have a shepherd like that. That's the kind of shepherd that we all want and admire. You ever met a shepherd that you admired? What I mean by that is a human shepherd. Maybe some of you have. But I wonder if people can say, oh, I was once under the oversight of a leader, a man who knew his responsibilities well. And he really, really cared. And he was just. And he really feared the Lord in the right way. And he shall be, verse 4, as the light of the morning. You know how it is when you first get up? The sun is fresh coming up over the horizon. It just seems, the new day, right? A new beginning. It's a new day. The sun is just coming up. And the dew, and all that. Let's read through it here. The light of the morning, when the sun first rises, even the morning without clouds, clear sky. And he's as the tender grass springing out of the earth by clear shining after rain. You know how it is when there's a beautiful spring rain and things are all green, and then the sun comes out and everything's wet, and the grass, you can almost see it grow. It's growing so well, and everything is just fresh and good and sustained. Just a beautiful thing. So this is kind of like word pictures that are being given to remind us of what I see as when David gives his last words is the kind of man who, as it says here, who rules over men must be, if he's going to be a good shepherd. I'm going to pass over this material on Jeremiah 23 because it gets into the whole concept of a bad pastor, a bad shepherd, someone who is irresponsible, not doing what they're supposed to do. Ezekiel 34, the entire chapter, same thing. Although the second part of the chapter of Ezekiel 34 gets quite a bit into the restoration of the flock and of the sheep. Because he himself, the great shepherd of the sheep, he himself will finally intervene when the flock has been nearly destroyed. So we're going to get past that material. Now let's look at these men being sent forth. Okay, Matthew 10, verse 5. These 12, Jesus sent forth. That got to be a little scary, right? They're by his side for some amount of time now. I'm not sure where Matthew 10 falls in the timeline of their personal time with him. But they've been with him by his side, watching him perform miracles, listening to his words of life, watching how he handled opposition and conflict. And now he's saying, now you're going to go out. And they probably would like, oh. It's like the first time you did something when you were a kid that was really scary, right? Something that you have a lot of uncertainty about. And these 12, Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not in the way of the Gentiles, and into the city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but rather, instead, go to the lost sheep, the house of Israel. So this kind of brings us back to that thing about if you had 99, but one got lost. He's sending them out to the one who's lost, to those who are lost, right? And I understand the setting here is that he's preparing the cities before he gets there. That, they have to have this announcement that the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That kind of thing. So they're being sent out to announce repentance to the lost sheep. And that there is a great shepherd of the sheep who really cares. Who knows how to be a shepherd. Not like the ones they're used to. Remember? He spoke as one having authority, not as the Pharisees spoke. Remember that? You see that at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. So go out to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And what are you going to do to the lost sheep? Heal them because they're sick. Cleanse them because they have disease. Raise them up because they're dead. And how many people are dead figuratively from the who are lost? And cast out the devils, because like the insects that fly around the head of the sheep and continue to bite at the ears and perhaps at the udders and other tender places. It's terrorizing. And that's what devils do. They terrorize. Freely you have received, freely give. You have received what? Power. You've received my word. You've received my influence, my teachings. So freely give it. Freely announce the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Interesting here how we can draw a parallel here to the way actual physical sheep could suffer. Something I learned about in this book also, the same book, 50 years old, people. This book is almost as old as Don. It's in the 23rd Psalm where he says, you anoint my head with oil. This book explains what that means. If the insects are bothering the sheep, they put oil on the ears and the head of the sheep. The kind of oil that repels, it's like an insect repellent. It prevents the insects from landing and biting the sheep and terrorizing the sheep. Something I did not know about. I always connected that phrase to, okay, David was anointed. And so in the 23rd Psalm, he's saying, you anointed my head with oil to be shepherd over Israel. Which you could draw that out of that as well, but I'm just saying the actual the common use of oil anointing a sheep to protect them from being terrorized. Okay, I want to read one thing here from a man named Os Hillman concerning John 10 and the shepherd's voice. And the sheep know his voice. And they aren't going to follow another voice. It's called one flock, one shepherd. Can you hear me? Anybody out there?
Yeah, we
Anybody
hear you.
there?
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Maybe they're not there. Maybe they haven't heard anything I said.
Nope. Can you?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
I don't know. Can someone give me a sound check?
So you're not hearing us? We can hear you.
Oh, my speaker's off. Sorry, my speaker was off.
Okay. Hear you now.
Okay, here we go. We are reading. I wasn't. My speaker was off. Okay, here we read, I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen that I must bring, and I must bring them also, and they too will listen to my voice, and there should be one flock and one shepherd. That is from John 10:16. And he writes this, a friend of mine told me a story about an experience he had in Israel. They were visiting in the country, visiting some of the famous biblical sites when they saw a group of sheep herders. A shepherd brought his flock of sheep into a round pen for the night. Then a few minutes later, another shepherd brought his flock into the pen. Then a few minutes later, a third, yet another shepherd brought his flock to the pen. There were 3 groups of sheep in the pen with no identifying marks on them. My friend wondered how in the world they would separate their sheep the next day. The next morning, a shepherd came over to the pen and made a comment to his sheep. One by one, the sheep filed out to follow him. Only his sheep followed his voice. My friend said it was an amazing scene to see. Only that shepherd's sheep followed him. The others remained in the pen. What a picture of Jesus' words spoken centuries earlier. Hearing and responding to Jesus' voice is the key to having a two-way relationship with God. It is the difference between having religion and having a relationship. Can you recognize God's voice in your life? Are you listening to the shepherd's voice? Do you respond when he calls? Ask Jesus to help you increase your ability to hear. Give more time to spending quiet moments in his presence, to hear his voice. He wants to be your good shepherd. And then that gets followed up with that whole section in John chapter 10, where he talks about the fact that the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He's not a hireling, and the sheep hear his voice and will not listen to another. Okay, verse 11. This is John 10:11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. Because he's not just a hireling. What do you think about that? Have men in the past given their lives because they were appointed to guide the people, to care for the people? I say some have throughout history. Of course, some have. And the great shepherd of the sheep, of course, ultimately gave his life, willingly gave his life for the sheep. So you see that we have a simple application to that, and then we also have the next level of ultimate sacrifice for the sheep. All right, I'm going to pass through this material. We've been going for a little while here. We're going to go to Acts 20 and hear this warning. You know, in Acts 20, what was going on, where Paul is on his way to Jerusalem, right? And in Acts 20, he comes together with the elders, and he talks to the elders, and he gives them this warning in verse 28, Acts 20:28. Take heed, therefore, to yourselves and to all the flock over the which the Holy Ghost has made you overseers. All right, men in Ephesus, you elders, you better pay attention. You got your responsibility and you got your marching orders here. Feed the church of God. Kind of like what he said to Peter 3 times, right? Feed my sheep. Feed the church of God, which he has purchased with his own blood when the great shepherd of the sheep laid his life down for the sheep. For I know this, the man Paul tells them, I know what's going to happen after my departing. Grievous wolves will enter in among you, and they won't spare the flock because they want to devour the flock. And also of your own selves, men shall rise up, speaking perverse things to draw away disciples after themselves. Why would you have to speak something perverse to draw a disciple after yourself? Because you have to say something that they like to hear, because they themselves have human nature and they are drawn to perverse things. Every one of us still have a battle. The Romans 7 battle, right? Sin wants us to come that way, and so we resist, and we resist the devil, and he'll flee from us. But here's the thing: if people come speaking perverse things, Some people will be drawn away by that because, oh, I can do that and that's still acceptable and I can still be holy and I can do that perverse thing. Therefore, watch closely and remember that by the space of 3 years, I cease not to warn everyone day and night with tears. So here's the thing. He's telling them that you better stay alert because you guys are accountable to be shepherds. And the sheep are going to be ravaged by the wolves eventually. And I'm talking about people who rise up from among you, because everyone that's with you is not among you. I mean, everyone among you is not one who can be trusted. All right, I'm going to wrap this up here. We're in John 21 where he says, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, and feed my sheep. And you already know those things. I have 1 or 2 more here. I like this one a lot because Peter shows us humility. 1 Peter 5, verse 1. Peter doesn't say, hey, everybody, listen up. I'm an apostle. And you need to know my position and my authority. You need to know who I am. He doesn't say it that way at all. The elders, verse 1, which are among you, I exhort, who am also an elder. So he addresses the elders as one of them. He says, I'm an elder too. And I'm also a witness of the sufferings of Christ. I was there when it happened. I saw it. And also I'm a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed yet in the future. And so you elders, verse 2, feed the flock of God which is among you. And take the oversight. Look over and have a kind of a benevolence and a kind of a careful, tender caring for and protection for. Not by constraint, or maybe yours says compulsion. Not because, well, I'm obligated. After all, I am an elder. Therefore, I guess I have to do it it's my duty. But, don't you want to do it because you love? Don't you want to do it because what a tremendous privilege it is that you've been allowed to be a steward over this responsibility? And that you're supposed to serve others and esteem them better than yourself? That's really the ideal, isn't it? That those who would feed the flock would take the oversight with that approach. Not by constraint, but willingly. You do it because it's your will to do it. And not for filthy lucre, but a ready mind. So here's some more, of course, qualities of a true shepherd. An overseer who is ready of mind, or eager, you could say it that way, of an eagerness in your spirit to serve, neither being lords over God's heritage, but instead of lording it over, but being an example instead to the flock. And that's how you lead, by being an example. You don't lead by yelling out commands. Not normally, right? Neither as being lords over the flock, but being examples. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, that great shepherd of the sheep, you shall receive a crown of glory that does not fade away. And so there you have, you do that which is fitting and right as stewards, and there's reward connected to that. You do what's right, and you'll love the flock, and you lay down your life for the flock. And there's great reward in that. A crown that's glorious, a crown that doesn't fade away, an eternal reward. And so you can see how encouraging that is to the people Peter was writing to. These elders were being told, if you will willingly and eagerly and lovingly serve the flock, there's eternal rewards for you. That's a motivating factor, isn't it? We're supposed to look at our reward with eager anticipation. We're supposed to be glad we have a reward. And he doesn't tell us we have rewards so that we can push it to the back of our mind and kind of like brush it aside. No, that's important. It's motivating. It's true, but it isn't the only reason that we do it. We don't love people because, after all, if I love you, there's a reward for me later, and therefore I will force myself or I'll somehow make myself love. No, it's got to be genuine. It's got to be the real McCoy. But there is reward attached to every one of us for being a good and faithful servant. So the next time you read the 23rd Psalm, which you ought to do, read it in light of some of the things that we talked about here. Last verse we'll read, Psalm 79:13. Psalm 79:13. So we, thy people, and sheep of your pasture, we will give thanks. We'll give you thanks forever. And we will show forth thy praise to all generations. And that's true. And that is going to happen also. The sheep of his pasture will give thanks forever. And you see the scene in Revelation of the 24 elders and the great multitude and all the rest of it. They fall down, they give thanks, right? For the way he is and for what he does, for his work that he accomplishes, and for the rewards that are with him and all the rest. So I hope you found this encouraging. I didn't really want to go through the material on the bad shepherds and the mistreatment of the flock that we find in a few different places. But I wanted to just remind you all as hearers of how encouraging it ought to be for us to know that we have a great shepherd. And because of our great shepherd of the sheep, we will be able to lie down and none will make us afraid. And that's quite a chore. That's an accomplishment. So I'd like to open it up now. I will stop sharing. And if anyone has comment, go right ahead.
Hey, Alan, this is Gina.
Hi, Gina.
So at the beginning, I don't have a question for you because I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna do that to you. But
Go ahead, Gina. I was just kidding before. You can ask whatever you want.
Okay. So, so at the beginning, you said something about how you were reading about the shepherd goes out and brings them back.
Yes.
I think this is like one of the greatest failures in our fellowships, and in our lives, in our circles. And I think one of the greatest things that I've learned having a practice and having clients is to completely continue pulling people back, because they start falling and I have to catch them and pull them back into, look, what were your goals? We made these 3 months ago.
Mhm.
Let's get back on track. Let's make some fresh new ones. Let's see where you went wrong. What do you need that's going to help you, maybe
Right.
we were doing the wrong things. Maybe you just needed a little different thing than what we were doing. And the same thing is it seems like the same exact thing I'm seeing it all the time now, everywhere, like especially in church or, in fellowship type settings where our groups are so small, and it's like, it's just us here now. We don't even have a fellowship. We're traveling a ways tomorrow to go to North Little Rock just to fellowship with some people, because that's the closest we can get to finding fellowship now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because why? Because these people because we didn't go and bring them back when they left. We didn't go and call them and say, hey, why are you gone? Why did you all of a sudden just not come anymore? Was it something we did? Do we need to do something different? Was it just that you have a new understanding of something? Well, let's talk about it. I mean, bring them back. And we
Sure.
didn't. We just let them go. And now we don't know where they're at. And now we have nothing. And we're sitting here going, oh, Bo, why we have feeling sorry for ourselves? We have nothing. No fellowship.
Yeah, well,
And
if there was
it could
truly
be our own-
closeness, if
It
there
could
was
be our
actually,
own fault, you know? It's like not all our own fault, but I mean, it's partly our own fault.
yeah, well, if there's really a closeness in your friendships and, an intimate sharing when you're together, then it would really hurt to have somebody go missing.
Yes.
You would want to pursue that.
But somehow, in all my life, we've desensitized to that. And you brought that out in those scriptures. There was a lot of things that showed that as you read through Psalms and you read through some of the others, and then toward the ending you said some more things, and I'm thinking, it's desensitizing. And we're desensitized, or we desensitize ourselves and we don't realize that we are. And
Well, yeah,
somehow we find a way.
If we don't love each other, then when somebody decides they're not going to come back anymore, we don't feel any real loss.
But that's the thing. We did feel loss, but we just, for some reason, didn't go get them. And we don't know why.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing, but we're working on not being that way anymore. So this was a really good study. And I want to tell you one more thing. Amy just got on every Friday night. Her and Amanda and Lindsay and lots of young adults are coming together every Friday night to Bible study. And they'll Bible study for almost 2 or 3 hours.
Wow, that's great.
Just because they need that binding that they don't have where they're at.
Sure.
And so they're binding, they found a way to do it, and they're doing it consistently. And their subject tonight was the same as yours, discipleship.
Wow.
Is that awesome or what?
That's great. I found it to be an encouraging topic, and I'm going to tomorrow have part 2 in our group, and I think people need more encouragement than they need correction. I may not agree with every little understanding of doctrine that you do, but I would rather have you speak to me something that helps lift me up and strengthen me than give me some area of minute correction. But we need both. But you get what I'm saying. We need to be more encouraging to people, whether they see things the way we do or not. And encouragement is something you can, in fact, be, and you can share encouragement even though you may not be in the same place and understanding other things. I believe that. So I'm glad to hear that about the young people, your daughter and some others. That's very, very great to hear, because they're expressing their interest and they're taking action to make it happen. And they need to be applauded for that, I think. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hello. I was going to say, we're breaking the habit, but for those of us that come from churches of God, that was the pastor's job. And we're learning, it takes a while to truly have that relationship with our brothers and care for them.
Right. Because we do have the great shepherd. So we do have a shepherd. But you're right, Jeff. We are learning to fill the role of caring for one another on the level of, we would lay down our life for one another if need be. And the great shepherd did do that because it was necessary. And greater love has no man than this, that he would lay his life down for his friends. So, yeah, I agree, Jeff. But we're learning a lot of things that we would never have normally learned in the past because we could sit quietly and we didn't have to learn it.
Well, I was just going to say, bingo. You know, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Hello?
Right.
Make the effort. Even if it's not your thing. I mean, for those of us who are kind of introverted, yeah, I am. He knows it. No, seriously. Sometimes, you know, you just gotta pull yourself in and recharge, and then you can kind of interact with other people. And speaking from experience, this is hard. You know, for someone like me, it kind of is hard for me to reach out and to say, hey, what's going on? But, you know, in my 50 plus years, I've kind of learned to set aside the 50-ish. Yeah, Paul says 50-ish. Set aside the uncomfortableness, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it, and just do it, because it's not about me, it's about the other person. So, hey, you know, for those of you who are kind of like me, sitting on the fence going, this is not my thing, you know, I'm not a Walmart greeter. It's not about yourself, it's about the other people. And, you know, it's kind of like the same thing. I'll be 100% honest. I hate doing dishes, but I do them because I love the people that I'm serving. I know that's weird, but and it's just like, hey, you know, I don't feel comfortable just kind of talking to strangers, but I just do it because it's about them and not me.
So that's why those young people that's why the young people are doing what they're doing. And Amy's very introvert. You all know that. And she's just really thoroughly enjoying this time with other people that she wouldn't normally have, because she just stepped out and did it. They just stepped out. Lots of them are introverts, and they just stepped out and decided, we got to do something. Otherwise, we're going to be lost, and we're going to just fall away and disappear. So.
Yeah, I'm glad she's doing that.
Aloha.
So Alan,
Ooh, Brian's saying something.
with all this talk about sheep, it was a bad speech.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Are you done, Brian? Are you through?
Al could never pull the wool over our eyes.
Just stop. Okay, what I was going to say in my little contribution, you were talking about the story about the three shepherds, and the sheep followed the specific shepherd's voice. And there is truth in that. I mean, Hal and I found this several years ago, as far as when we were up there for Sabbath, and there's a YouTube video of I guess they're tourists mainly, but there's a guy, a shepherd, that has his flock out on the green hillside, and he challenges them. He says, "I'll give you whatever, I don't know if it's like $5 or something like that if you can get the sheep over here. Call them over to the fence."
Oh.
And they, hey, here, you know, hey, you know, they're making noise, waving and stuff, and the sheep are not even looking up. They're just like that. And he goes over there and says like a couple words in whatever local lingo, and they all rush right over to him. It wasn't a setup. This was an actual. I mean, it's like 5, 6, 7 different people were just driving by to get pictures and stuff, and
yeah,
there is so much truth into that because they are so accustomed to his voice. They know who their master is, who their shepherd is, and anybody else, hey, go away. We follow our leader.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very,
my dad, we grew up with sheep. I grew up on a farm, but my dad was very much, we had lots of sheep. So I grew up with the sheep, and they knew my dad's voice, like just like that.
wow.
And all that stuff you said about them when they don't want to lay down and stuff, that is very true. My dad knew some of that also. And he knew when they were afraid. He knew if something was not right, they would all be, you know, when he knew they should be settling down.
They're
And
stressing
he'd go
out.
out there and he'd find what it was, and he'd figure out a way to get them to settle down and feel safe somehow. And then they'd start to settle down and feel safe because he would get rid of whatever it was that they were afraid of.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what David did when he was a young lad, you know, and he was in the field with him at night. And, I mean, maybe the sheep knew because he killed the lion and the bear. Maybe the sheep kind of knew this guy. We're pretty safe with this guy. I don't know. But they have to feel safe to lay down. Yes.
A number of years ago, we had, at a feast site, we had learned about a guy who grew up on, I think, Montana. His dad had a sheep, and as a boy, he'd be out there taking care of the sheep. 9 years old, and he's out in the mountains, you know, and caring for the sheep on his own. And he talked, which I gave a lot of analogies and things about the sheep and things he had learned and so on. I found really interesting is he's out in the mountains, and these sheep do not have pens to be in. And he said when you have sheep that are out there like that, their instincts, you know, and sensitivities to fear, they're very aware of their environment, and they'll be on guard. He said when you bring those sheep in and you put them in pens, they tend to let down and they lose their instincts. And I find that interesting, spiritually, the analogy. You know, if you are out there and the awareness of how your instincts are, you know, challenged, and of your awareness of what's going on around you versus you're in a pen and everybody's taking care of you and doing things and you're very controlled and you lose that instinct of being on guard and being aware of things. It was a good
You could
analogy.
lose, you kind of lose your edge of awareness.
Yeah, right. You just expect, you know, yeah, you expect, but you don't need to think or do anything.
Yeah, and you can see how that would be in human behavior as well. I mean, if you are always surrounded by your house, or you know, you're in your own house, you're in your own congregation, let's say, you're in your own grocery store, you know, you feel safe. There's people who grow up and grow old and die and they never leave their hometown because, I don't know if you know this, they're afraid. There's fear of traveling because that world out there is a scary place. It's unfamiliar. So maybe that's kind of what you're getting at here. They're in the pen, they're in a familiar place, and they know that they're going to be fed there. But a lot of people refuse to go anywhere far away because they fear, you know, leaving their hometown. I know I talk to people in the city of Detroit, they're afraid to go out to the suburbs. They've never been out there. They stay in the city. It's what they know. They stay with the familiar. Everything else is scary.
I don't know, a few times I've been in Detroit, I think I'd be scared in town. What's left of it.
That's what, yeah, that's how I, yeah. It's funny, but they don't see it that way. Well, for those of you who may be interested, this book that was published in 1970 is very good. It's by Philip Keller. Again, this man was a shepherd in Africa for some years. So he wrote this book from his own personal experience. You might like it. Thank you, Don.
Thank you for helping me out here.